Okay, and welcome back to the next in our Chapter 2 lecture series. So far in this series, we've talked about the structure of an atom. We've talked about those atoms that are reactive, meaning they have an incomplete outer shell. And then we talked about the different types of chemical bonds they can form. That would be an ionic, a covalent, or hydrogen bond. Here in this presentation, we're talking about metabolism, and this is all of the chemical reactions that's happening in the cell or in the body. When we talk about chemical reactions, we're basically talking about the formation of those bonds that we were describing earlier, or the breaking of those bonds that we were describing earlier. And very often in the human body, in the cell, we're talking about forming and breaking of covalent bonds. That's probably the majority of what we'll see. Now, this term metabolism is including all of a chemical reaction, so it's this umbrella term, and there are two different subcategories of metabolism. You can have either an anabolic reaction or a catabolic reaction. And the term anabolic reaction is talking about a synthesis reaction, and this word means to make something. So you can see we're taking our reactants, A and B, and we're forming our product, AB. Okay, so anabolic is synthesis. Both of those terms mean to make. Catabolic is the opposite. So this is a decomposition, a breakdown reaction. Now, an easy way to remember this is that prefix cata in catabolic is the same as in catastrophe, which catastrophes are big breakdowns of something, right? So in this case, you're starting with a molecule AB, and you're breaking it down into its parts, A and B separately, okay? And notice that these are opposite reactions of each other. So in the catabolic reaction, we're going to eat our food and we're going to break it down into the pieces and parts. And then we're going to take those pieces and parts, our nutrients, and we're going to do anabolic reactions to build the molecules that our cells actually need. Now, as you're looking at your equations, the reactants are going to be on the left side of the arrow and the products are on the right side of the arrow. So that's always the case. Now, water, we started talking about it a little bit when we were discussing the hydrogen bond that we saw between water molecules, and we see that with water molecules because water is polar, and so you have slight charges. Water has a lot of important properties. We're going to have a whole little presentation just on water, but what we'll see is one of its properties is that it's reactive. Water is going to be involved in a special type of anabolic reaction called a dehydration synthesis. Sounds harder than it is. You already know what that word dehydrate means. Remove water. In synthesis, if you didn't know it before, we just introduced it. That means to make. So you're going to remove water and you're going to make something. So here's your basic equation for that. In this case, our A is paired with a hydrogen and our B is paired with a hydroxide. When you remove a hydrogen and a hydroxide, you are forming H2O, which is water, and those A and B reactants come together to make the AB product. So that removal of two hydrogens and an oxygen is a removal of water, that's dehydration, and you made something new, so that's synthesis. So when we have broken down our food and we have our nutrients, the raw building blocks for our molecules, we're going to very often see water involved in the forming of the new molecules that our cells actually need. The opposite of this is a special type of catabolic reaction called hydrolysis. Or if you want to mispronounce it, you can call it hydrolysis. Now that ending lysis is probably new for you, but it's something you're going to see repeated throughout the course. So start to recognize it. Lysis means to break. So hydrolysis means water breaks. And this is a catabolic reaction. So not only is that water molecule going to break apart, but you're going to break apart another molecule to get its components. Okay, notice this is the opposite reaction to what I just showed you for dehydration synthesis. So here you have your reactant AB and your water molecule. And then you're going to break apart the water molecule and pair the hydrogen back to the A and the hydroxide, the OH, back to the B. So you're lysing, you're breaking apart that water molecule. And you're using that then to break down that AB molecule that you started with. And so they're opposites of each other. And they're very often reversible. So again, in the hydrolysis reaction, you're going to be eating food and you're going to be digesting that food into nutrients. That digestive process is involving a lot of hydrolysis. And then your cells are going to use those pieces and parts to make the things that they need, and that's your dehydration synthesis. When we see reversible reactions, we'll see arrows pointing in each direction to show that it can go either way. Pay attention to that word hydrolysis because you're going to see it used in your text as hydrolyze. If you hydrolyze a molecule, you have broken it down with the help of water. So just make sure you're picking up on that. And again, this is significant because this is, all of these reactions are happening in terms of eating our food, breaking it down to nutrients, and then taking those nutrients and using them to make the molecules that our cells need. Now, all of this is happening, in part to provide energy for our reactions, or these reactions are either making energy or using energy. So we need to take a few minutes to talk about what energy is. Energy is described as the ability to perform work. So the ability for these reactions to happen. Sometimes your cells need energy just to get a chemical reaction to happen. Sometimes your cells need energy for physically moving things around in the cell or physically moving the cell. So we'll see lots of different processes over our study that will require energy. Now there's two types of energy to talk about today. One is potential energy, and this is your energy that's being stored. So when you plug your cell phone in at night to the charger, you're storing energy into that battery. That's potential energy so that you can then have access to your phone, all the next day, right? Kinetic energy is the energy of work. So this is when the energy is actually being released and used by the cell. If we're sticking with the phone analogy, this is when your phone is running off of battery and you're using it and you're, draining that battery throughout the day. That's the kinetic energy. There's another type of energy to talk about here, and this is called energy of activation. This is the energy that's required to actually get a reaction to happen. And, in the laboratory, we can get reactions to happen by simply heating them up. You're doing this in the kitchen as well. So you can speed up a reaction by heating it, or you can just wait. And sometimes waiting for a reaction to happen means years and years and years. So clearly a cell can't do this. You can't just heat up your cell for the reaction to happen, and you can't just wait years and years and years and years for that reaction to happen. We need our reactions to happen in a manner that's safe for the cell. The cell's alive, and quickly, because that cell needs some stuff. And so what we see is that in cells we have special molecules called enzymes. These enzymes are just super amazing molecules. Enzymes are called biological catalysts. And this term catalyst means a molecule that is important for the reaction to happen, but it's not used and it's not changed from being part of the reaction. In a chemical reaction that includes enzymes, they're usually drawn above the arrow to show that they're not a reactant and they're not a product, but they are important for that reaction to happen. Now, why are enzymes so amazing? Well, they lower that energy of activation, meaning that now that reaction can happen in a safe manner for your cell, no explosions, no heat required, and we don't have to wait years and years and years and years. It's going to happen fast. It's going to happen in a timely manner. So your enzyme is lowering the energy that's required for the reaction so that it's safe and it's quick for the cell. And so what we see is that basically any reaction that's happening in your cell, you should assume it requires an enzyme.